Hi, thank you for joining us in Human Capital Gains today. Our guest today is Deb Lynch, CFO at Spartan, the global obstacle racing and functional fitness brand that puts more than 1 million people through its events every year across 40 plus countries. Deb came up through finance leadership at Thermo Fisher and National Grid before taking the CFO seat at the company, whose entire product is based on human resilience. We're going to talk about what it looks like to build a lean, disciplined team inside a brand that is built on the idea that people thrive when things get hard. Deb, thank you for joining us today.
Mark, Jerry, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
So let's talk about this thriving when things get hard. Tell us a little bit about how kind of like that mantra really shapes what your decisions are in the business and how it um, moves the team forward that you're working with every day.
Yeah, just a little background people might not realize about Spartan. So, like many other companies during the pandemic, we were shut down for a couple of years. We couldn't run events, and that obviously put us in a very straddled position when it came to our financials. And the board took a look at where we were as we were trying to come out of it in 23, and they were trying to decide, do we, close the doors or do we give it a push? And the reason why they were contemplating that is because the consumer wouldn't let it go. We have such a strong consumer base that we didn't have a finance team running finance. We didn't have marketing. We lost our best people. Like it was really of a shell of a back office here. And they made a decision. Let's hire a couple of people and see if we can get this thing rolling again. So I joined them a couple of years ago, and we've since created a whole finance team, and that in itself has been a test of human resiliency, as you can imagine. We're located here in downtown Boston, so we've got really high compensation rates in a company that's really struggling around how to dig themselves out of a pretty big hole. And so here we are. Hard to say. Not surprisingly, but through a lot of work, we have a phenomenal finance team. We're closing the books, we're creating financials, and we're continue to gain a little strength every day. And so it's been really an incredible team effort to this point.
I think there's a famous rallying cry that CFOs have, which is never waste a good crisis, right? So as I'd be really curious, Deb, as you're rebuilding or putting together your finance team, did you take that as an opportunity to build it back different, or what were the changes that you made, or things you were considering that maybe you wouldn't have done 5, 10 years ago?
Yeah, great question. Let me give you a little context to kind of preempt my response. So Joe Justina, who's our founder and chief operating officer, during this time, Joe, who sees people at the races all the time, he's got people reaching out to him constantly. He had filled the office with a lot of people that didn't necessarily have skills. They were friends of his, and they're like, they had got an A plus in algebra back in junior high, and so like you'd make a great senior accountant, and that's just kind of the way Joe's wired. So he's really got quite a big heart. And so, unfortunately, I walked in here with a team of people that really did not have any accounting or finance skills. And so one of the ways I navigated that is that a big part of the team was down in Florida where Joe sits. And he was kind of creating his own home office down there when the main home office was in Boston. And we just decided we were going to centralized finance in Boston. We needed to have boots on the ground, people in the office, right? Like I think that's something that people weren't necessarily doing 2 years ago, but people in the office 5 days a week, and so that's how we started. So I had to kind of go through that process of first listening and understanding what everybody was doing, weeding out the people who really didn't have the skill, didn't really understand what they were doing or weren't doing anything at all. We were paying them a salary. And just so one by one, roll by roll, I know what the organization needed. So just kind of re-centralizing all of those roles here in Boston. So that kind of helped me guide. That was, part of the process was getting everybody, if you wanted to, you had to be in office and you had to be in Boston. We relocate you if you wanted, type of thing, right? But I think one of the things from my experiences at some of those companies you mentioned, whether it's National Grid, Veolia, or Thermo Fisher, like through my career, I always have been of the mindset that it's better to have a few really good, strong people than a lot of I think people that were very transactional in nature for this particular project. I needed people that were resilient enough to really were entrepreneurial mindset, right? Really willing to roll up their sleeves and processing AP one day and maybe doing cash flow forecasting the next. I really needed to have people that really pay a little bit of a premium for a few good people than just filling roles with bodies of people that had a skill. And I had some wins. I had some misses for sure. We've had a lot of turnover. Not an easy place to work. But I think for the past year, we've been pretty stable. And it's that team that has really helped us to get beyond get the information in the hands of people to really like, oh, wow, now we've got data to help run the business, right? So I think the big thing for me, Marco, in that sense is, I think when you're working on something of this caliber, having people in office really makes a difference. Whether it's 3 days or 5 days, that can be debated. But I think face-to-face is super important when you're really trying to move the needle in something. And Sue, I think it's worth investing in your people and taking care of them is super important. Because without a really strong team, you're not going to be successful.
So you've run finance inside, as you just mentioned, biotech, construction, insurance. What's kind of like that one workforce truth that shows up in every single one of those industries as it relates to a finance team? And was there any truth that you needed to question as you were coming into Spartan?
I'd have to say, in my observation, the first thing comes to mind for me on this, Gary, is that in recent years, I'm talking, the last 20, the one thing I'm noticing in my teams is the lack of ability for critical thinking, like really lacking the skill that's coming up the ranks, or a team of people that hardworking, super smart, but kind of transactional, not like really knowing how to put together the punchline for the executive summary, right? Especially now that I am in this role, I've got just a little bit of time to read the headlines. I can't have people sending me emails with spreadsheets and not even telling me what cell to look in, right? It just doesn't help. And so it's something I'm really actively working every day with my team. We have these conversations, even just emails. Like we talked about the digital age a little bit. We've spoken about the volume of emails is insane, right? Like I actually can't go to sleep at night until I actually make sure mine are addressed, because I'm just afraid of what might be in there and I won't be able to sleep. But I think that's probably why I'm working the hours I'm working in some part, right? But how do we help each other? It doesn't matter what level you are, right? If you're a junior analyst or a senior analyst or a director, always, just don't forward an email. Explain like what it is you're looking for, what it is you're offering. Like be very clear about what you need from the communication. I just think the communication in emails is done in such a way that it drains more time from people, and then you don't actually get the output that you were actually looking for, right? And then you wonder why someone didn't respond to you. It's because they didn't have the time to read the email, right? Yeah. So I think with AI, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was just, I read a series on AI on LinkedIn, and one of the articles I read about was this volume explosion that we're having kind of as a result of AI, because it's so easy to create stuff, right? And so now, instead of sending Gary a quick 3-sentence email or text message, I can just have my you know, 4 paragraph, perfectly grammatically correct email. And like, I don't think that makes the communication any better, right? And I think it's really funny you say that because like just reflecting on my own personal like growth as a professional. So I was not like trivia about me. Like I'm a licensed CPA. I've been in finance my entire career, but I was not a finance undergraduate. I was an international relations undergraduate. So I did all that stuff kind of postgraduate. And so I was really good at writing. Uh, and then I took a job as like, a consultant, and I did everything in Excel, and I started writing like a caveman, right? Because like everything in my mind was if statements. And I almost wonder if we undervalue, or historically we've undervalued that communication part in finance. And if that really is becoming just like a core competency that we really need to have, like not just in leadership, but throughout all of the finance function.
Yeah, no doubt. And quite honestly, not even broader than finance, just organizationally, right? Because I'm touching points with everybody throughout the organization, and I see it as a underlying theme for all areas of the company, quite honestly. But clearly with my team. So what someone at some point in my career said, before you send that email, ask yourself, do you really need to send it? Even, right? Like, right. And if you do send it, make sure that it, make it as easy as possible for that recipient. And Marco, it's really funny you just said that about the AI rewriting your emails. It's a lot of extra time to go through the grammatical changes and things like that. I just had my controller came in the office the other day, and she's like, "Oh, it's so great! I just realized AI is now rewriting my sentence for me." It just shocked me that it was just becoming available to her for whatever reason on her software. Like, we're all in the same software. Like, well, I've been having that happen for me for months, right? For a year now. But I don't even know what's on everybody's desktop. Like, it's just kind of interesting that we're not like it wasn't kicking in for her. I guess when there was something that I clicked really early on that said, I want this to be active. But if you had clicked it not to be active, it might not be happening. So think about my small department, but these bigger companies that have all these people in the workforce, doing this, if they have the control to opt in or opt out of some of the things, you don't even know how people are spending their time or if they're getting the efficiencies from something like that.
Yeah. It's it's 2 points based on what we were just talking about that really come to mind. Like, we're talking to a lot of professionals right now that are all kind of saying the need really to bring back that emphasis on the human skills, right? And the soft skills that a lot of people are lacking, and that we kind of strayed away from that a little bit. And when we talk about bringing AI into a company, a lot of people are focused on immediately looking at the technical skills that are required to be proficient in AI. And the irony of it is that like a lot of the technical skills are baked into the product, right? So it's like you don't necessarily need the technical understanding to be able to vet the output, at least, right? But to actually understand how to use the tool are those skills like advanced reasoning and critical thinking, the human elements of taking that output and like being able to tell a good story behind that output, right? Like the storytelling aspects and the communication, like you just said, aspects. It's like Marco and I use this story all the time when we talk to people. It's he has his 4-paragraph email that would have been 3 sentences. Now meanwhile, I have a bot that'll take his 4-paragraph email and reduce it probably to the 3 sentences that he would have just written in the first place, right? So it's like, is that an efficiency gain? No. Right? So it's actually more work on both of our sides, but it's not human work on both of our sides at that point, right? So it's when we talk about gaining efficiency, I hate using efficiency as a metric for AI success, right? Because a lot of that efficiency is superficial, right? So are those efficiency and are those gains giving you kind of like speed to insights and speed to action, right? Like that's real efficiency if you're measuring it in the right way. But just either higher output of tasks or a faster output of tasks isn't necessarily meaningful if it's not changing the back end, right? And we really can't derive ROI from those activities. I think a lot of people are just measuring it the wrong way.
Yeah, I'm digesting as you're saying that, because I think of it a little differently. And so let me share with you how I'm thinking about it, and maybe how, because I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think what we're saying about in terms of the human resilience, where I see there be benefit, and it's contradicting to what you're saying about the efficiency related to technical tasks. Like, let's take FP&A as an example. I think that's the place where you're really going to see, unlike accounting, which has to be black and white, has to be accurate, has to be factual, right? Where I'm really seeing where it's going to help with human resilience on the AI side, with the financial planning analysis aspect of the business, is that unfortunately a lot of my FP&A people are doing a lot of data manipulation still to get the numbers comparable, right? And I saw this in big companies, like, right, they bought 2 different ERPs, they're taking the data to the, all the mergers and acquisitions back in the, whatever, early 2000s, merging all the data together to do comparatives. You can even do that in AI now. So not even so much that, but what I'm hoping is that those technical efficiencies, along with analytical efficiencies through AI. So like, you can throw in there, you get your data sets, you put them in AI, you have it do the analytics for you. What we need to make sure we're doing, though, is following through with that and having that human, how do I always say it? How I think about it is, you want to test and validate, right? And it's that conversation that's really helpful. And I think that's what so many FP&A teams have struggled in a lot of my prior years, is that they're spending so much time with the data manipulation that they never really get to the really good conversation about the analytical outputs, right? And so I do think there's a place for both, but it can't be, it has to be complementary. It has to be the human piece has to be followed through on if we never get there, right? That's the most important aspect of this, really.
And that's one of the things we see when it comes to like AI implementation, is there's a couple of things that happen. Like, one, it can make things look so good, right? Like, you can go in and have it build out like a complete, like, cash flow forecast from scratch, and it looks like amazing, right? But if you don't have, to your point, Deb, like, if you don't have the critical thinking and the foresight, or the sort of like, why does it matters? Like, what do I do with this kind of thing? Mindset going into it, it just becomes so incredibly shallow. And I think that's part of the danger, because like, part of the danger is, like, in the past, if someone put together a really complex model, like, they put together the model, they knew all the pieces in it, they knew where everything came from. Now you can have, the robots do it for you, and it looks amazing, but like, I have no idea what any of this stuff means, right? And then I give it to you, my CFO, and like, here's the thing. You're like, oh, this looks great. Like, wait a minute, like this looks like it's trending in the wrong direction. Like, why is that happening? Like, I have no idea, because I forgot to ask the robot that, right? So I think you're right. I think that critical thinking piece, I think, is incredibly important, and it allows us to build really powerful things. But like, in sort of the wrong hands, it'll kind of get you like in a cul-de-sac road to nowhere kind of thing, where things look really, really great, but like, it's like a dead end, because you don't have that overarching sort of insight or experience to take it like a click deeper, right? Because usually like, if you're in leadership, you want the summary, but you don't want just the summary. Like, you want to be able to like double click into things that you find interesting, or things that you can drill deeper into. And I think a lot of times AI will give you an amazing summary. It might even give you like the underlying data, but if you don't have the person that's operating it, if they don't have that context or that expertise, that drilling deeper piece is where you get stuck a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, as we're all learning, I mean, the jobs that are vanishing are the young analyst, that junior accountant, right? That junior analyst that's coming in and learning the guts, like learning the tasks of the very beginnings of where that transactional data comes from. Like, they would be the ones that kind of brought the data together for us, right? That they would do like just data work, right? In Excel, whatever, right? They were just preparing the information for that next level to sort of try to make sense of it, right? That person is being replaced by AI. I think kids are coming into the system without really understanding sort of the fundamentals of accounting or right to I'm of the mindset there's two different schools I think in finance and operational finance where some people think accounting and FP&A can be kind of separate and siloed sort of organizations. I very much believe you're going to have a much stronger FP&A team if they understand accounting. And so I think it's better to have pockets of organizations where they're doing like activities, right? So like you have your accounting team for like a large organization, you might have a whole finance team for their technology area that are both your accountants and your FP&A people together so they can understand both. It doesn't necessarily have to be more expensive, but I think my point being that we're just the kids aren't learning the baseline skills anymore. Like the computers are doing like if we were joking with I went to dinner with my old team from National Grid just last week and there's a table of 15 and we're making fun that we started to do accounting with pencils and green ledger paper back in the day, right? The kids aren't getting any of those baseline experience of truly matching debits and credits. Like, right, the systems are all doing all this work for us. They don't have the true fundamental understanding. So how do you unwind something if you don't understand how it got there in the first place, right? So like I'm just saying to your point, Marco, like there's a beautiful summary, but how do you trace it, right? It's like they don't have the knowledge to understand how it was built to unwind it, so to speak.
Yeah, we're seeing that gap. We're seeing AI eliminate that like bridge to understanding in a lot of different industries, not just finance, right? Because, and it's not that it's necessarily like a shortcut, but we need to change the training process and the education process about how work is done, right? And have a better understanding of like when to bring in AI, what are the better use cases for AI, when's a smart use case, when is it a shortcut that's going to reduce insights, right? I think is what a lot of people are thinking about.
I was a guest on a CFO podcast recently, and we talked about this very thing. Like, what does this mean? And I think the future is just going to be different, though, because on the one hand, they aren't getting all that hands-on data manipulation experience, but on the other hand, like you talk to young people. I remember, I was at an AICPA event with Gary. AICPA does this, like, they're really, really invested in this apprenticeship program and, young leaders and that kind of stuff. So I was talking to some of the young folks. And it's like, well, what do you want in your like, what do you want in your career? And really thinking back to like when I was early in my career, I can identify with it. Just really hungry to practice those leadership skills, right? To be in charge, to be like, get ownership over something. So I think AI might give an opportunity for that, where it's like, yes, you have to understand the processes, but, I think maybe this is an opportunity to build some of those leadership, some of those management skills. Because you think about like the traditional career project or like pathway, right? It's like you start, you do all the data stuff, you get so good at the data stuff that you get promoted to check other people's work, right? And then that's kind of like the way you work your way up. And then somewhere along your career, it's like, oh, congratulations, Deb. You are so good at checking other people's work. Now I'm going to have you manage people, which is like a completely different skill set, right? And we see that a lot of times. That's like where it's like careers will go sideways because they're really good at like the technical stuff, but really bad at managing people. So I wonder if maybe in the future there's a way where we can have people like practice some of those like leadership management skills earlier on by managing virtual coworkers or managing processes that can maybe both, give them insights into like, you need to have the insights for what does the end work product look like? What are we trying to build here? But they're not necessarily spending all that time like 10 keying in everything, right? And then they're managing the process and managing like virtual coworkers to give them sort of like hands-on experience for like these higher level, leadership and management skills. I almost wonder if that's where we're heading to, or if organizations that like fundamentally rethink about here's what entry level people do, and there's these you know what I mean? There's like these jarring sort of like parts of your career where all of a sudden it's like, you're really good at this and we're gonna have you do something completely different. We never trained you what to do, et cetera. that if there's more of a glide path where we can build some of those like communication, leadership type skills earlier on with AI.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that goes back to what I was saying about the FP&A. I think there's pros and cons with everything. And I definitely think that's one of the big pros. That's exactly what's going to happen is that the workforce is going to be working at the higher level, why they don't need those entry level positions anymore. I do think though, if you're in at least in the finance world, when you do stumble across something that doesn't make sense and you have to go figure out why, like, the big disparity, you have to dig in to explain why. My only thought is, I don't know if kids since they're not putting the blocks together, they don't know what blocks they're looking for to explain the difference. And look, I mean, even in with ERPs today, a lot of it's already automated anyhow, right? Like bank reconciliations, like you don't have people ticking and tying for the most part. There are a lot of, the systems today do a lot of the matching even before AI, right? So the profession has already shifted from being maybe, 100% accountant skill to technology and accounting, right? It's already there because just the way that they do the work is technically required, right? You need to understand technology and how one ERP does it may be different than a different ERP, but that's the skill. You need somebody who knows that ERP, right? When you're hiring somebody. But you just wonder, like, if the system doesn't know how to do something, I sometimes with the conversations, and I don't think people even understand the concept of what they're even trying to accomplish, right? Like it's a transactional activity to them. They're not like thinking like, what does it mean that I don't have this matched? Like, what does that actually mean, right?
Right.
It means that maybe somebody stole some money from you, like you don't know.
Right. Or worse, they came into you like, it's done. There's like a few that didn't match, but like the rest of them are done. Here you go. Right.
But yeah, and I think that's the exciting part, right? Is that, to give these, and quite honestly, I think it's all happening. Like I've got kids in college, but I remember the stuff that they were doing in high school. I was like, wow, that's impressive, right? Talk about leadership skills. They're coming out of high school levels with better skills, right? And so it's all exponential.
Yeah, I almost wonder though. I think if we design it right, Deb, I think maybe like the way you're talking about it, we might have a better human-centric workforce, which is weird because like people think about AI as like stealing our humanity, stealing our jobs and all that stuff. But to your point, like I think this could be a wake-up call for some of the organizations that are like so ingrained in just the transactional nature of their work, where it's like I show up to work today, I take this pile of paper, I enter these numbers into this screen, and they just don't even think about it, right? And that's fine, right? I'm trying to like belittle those people, but maybe now it's like forcing people to think about why am I doing this and why is it important? Why are you using it for? Maybe that's the first step in terms of the proper AI implementation. Just like moving away from the transactional, because I think that's the fear. I think people are worried that it's going to be hyper transactional, right? And the only thing we do is we just like babysit the robots all day. We don't really think about it. But I think maybe this is an opportunity for us to do a deeper dive into like what are the transactional processes we have. Like to your point, like so many times you'll see job descriptions. Like if I'm trying to hire a staff accountant, it'll say must have expertise in this specific ERP. Like maybe in the future the ERP doesn't matter. Like I don't care what ERP you use because they're all kind of converging in some AI enabled workflow that's going to be natural language or whatever. So maybe in the future it's more important. Like I don't need you to understand the ERP. I need you to understand what the ERP does. And if you understand what the ERP does, you can kind of figure out how to do it most effectively with all these new tools that are changing every single day.
I think it's that speed to insight, right? Like how do we get faster speed to insight? And if you don't know the insights that you're looking for, right, it makes it a lot harder. And I think it's just establishing that as a baseline.
Yeah, and I think there's a comment that maybe Marco you just said. Like I lived that where you get to the end of the cycle, monthly cycle, and you have these lists of suspense items or these list of things that you have to dive into. You get to the next cycle and it's still not kind of root caused because you didn't get to it, right? But yet we need kids with more skills to be able to root cause. So I think that's where we have to be making sure the kids are coming through up the ranks with critical thinking skills. That's because
like I was at a company and the books weren't kept up super well, and we were going through some audit stuff, and like one of the suspense accounts, like there was like a suspense account that had a couple $100,000 in it. It'd been there for years. And it had always been there because like no one had a good conversation about it. So I went to the auditor. I was like, look, these are all supposed to be like temporary, like reconciling accounts. Like that's been on it for years. They've probably resolved one way or the other, right? Can't we just write them off, right? And we did. And so it's thinking about things like that, like thinking about the bigger picture. And like I don't know, maybe I'm an optimist, but maybe AI will enable us to like step back away from like find the blue button on the screen to really start thinking more critically. Like, okay, if all that stuff gets handled for me, maybe that gives me more time and space to think more like globally in terms of like, why does it matter? What does Deb want to know from me? What do I need to know from Deb? How can we communicate more effectively instead of like, you know, that those 20,000 reports that you would get like 1 week at a time. I'm going to just give them all to you on your desk on Monday, all at once, right? Boom, here you go, right? And you just get, it's just increase in volume and velocity without really an increase in quality and knowledge is where I'm hoping things go with all this AI stuff.
You know, we were talking about it a bit earlier, and I think the one thing that has kept me up from sleeping at night in recent days is what we're discovering with some of these big social media platforms that we do a lot of our advertising and marketing on. Because as we were saying, with the changes with AI in those algorithms, between the way we speak with them and what we expect out for inputs and outputs, something's changing behind the scenes that we're having the same input, right? We're spending all this money, but we're not getting the same return. And so we're trying to figure out, did I raise the problem? Like what, and so of course in this situation, my revenue stream is the most important thing for me, right? And so it's really the driver of everything where it starts, and I got to protect it incredibly tightly. And so the role of that person in technology who would be, his job was just to make sure that, we're doing the same activity every day. That's not good enough anymore. His job has changed. He's got to go in, as you said, and try to understand, like, do the analyticals and be critical thinking, be like, I'm not seeing the same activity I was once seeing output. I wonder why, right? Like, but you don't have people who know to like that. They're just going through the motion every day. Yeah. They're not really thinking about why is something different here, right? And meanwhile, we're bleeding lots of opportunity, right?
Yeah. I mean, we see it a lot where it's also that role, like the only lever he's ever had to pull is volume, right? And now that lever isn't producing the same results, right? So it's an understanding of the business enough to know like what lever, what's the other tactic, what's the next lever, what's the next driver that you need to evaluate, right? That's going to change the output, right?
That's right.
It's weird too.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's really weird too because Gary and I do a lot of stuff with AI. Like to your point, Deb, like in the past, it's like, hey, we've got this really, really cool race, and you have this like, what's going to appeal to the people that that like it. We're going to get in all the socials, but now like the socials are like being dominated by robots. I can't remember who it was. I think maybe it was one of the executives at Anthropic, but they expected over 50%, and it's probably way more than that, probably. But like the vast majority of content that's being posted on like X, right, Twitter, it's not human generated, right? And you see it on LinkedIn too, and you see it on Facebook. There's like this singularity that all the posts are converging on because they're chasing the same algorithm, so now everyone says the same. So it's like this really weird thing where it's like, how can I create something so that somebody's robot can find it to tell them that, hey, this is something you personally are going to want to do, right? It's like, I want my robot to talk to their robot so that they can tell the person, like, you should go run this race. It's going to be amazing. Like, bring your friends. It's a great time.
Yeah, I maybe wonder if we should go back to just billboards, right? Maybe we'll just hit the
seriously, just start posting bills in downtown Boston, right? That's like, go just just like underground bands used to do, right? Just hand out a bunch of stickers
Yeah.
and tell people to put them on stop signs.
But to thread in some of the other topics we were talking about as they relate to this issue about, human resilience, is that, look, so we got the technician, we got the marketing manager who's scratching his head saying, like, I'm doing my job right. I don't understand what's going on. So it has required the president, who's now like really concerned, right? Because like the marketing level isn't really his role, right? Like it is kind of a technical role, but we're all connected. It's all interrelated, right? We need a critical thinker. The marketing manager, that's not his forte. He's an art guy, right? A marketing promotional guy. So our president has been in the weeds, right? But you need to have that mentality, that mindset. Like what we're finding too with the workforce we're having now, and it could be a Spartan thing just because we've had to hire so many new people in this short period of time, but you're having to come down 2 or 3 levels deeper to show them what good looks like, right? And so having to really get in it. So that's where the human element still needs to be there, but people have to be willing, like can't forget how to lean in and just because you're at the top doesn't mean you don't roll up your sleeves and like try to root cause that problem, because the people you have working under you just don't know how to. Huh? They don't know the next step. You got to be in there asking the next question for them. Okay, what about this? What about that? Right? So that human piece still has to be there through this journey, more so than ever.
It's like converting them from task-oriented individuals into goal-oriented individuals, right? Where it's like in the past, it was like, here's my checklist of things. I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this. And then magically everything happens the way it should be. But with everything changing so quickly, maybe it's more of a here's the goal, find your own way kind of future that we're living in.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's the only way to bridge that gap between strategy and execution right now, right? It's not routine tasks, like we just said, with the marketing campaign, like you can't just pull on the same levers, right? So it's, strategies to grow the business. The old path isn't working. Like it's going to take other people coming in to figure out what a new path needs to look like, right?
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, just like with my own usage, I find Google's really smart because they're really investing heavily in Gemini because they saw this as a fundamental risk to their business model. But it's like I find I increasingly reach more for the AI tool to ask it a question than to do a Google search or something. And if I'm not doing the Google search, then those Google ads don't pop up, right? How do I get the word out if that's the way people are seeking information now? It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I think as a finance leader, I'm constantly reminding my team, like, we had a gentleman who does our payroll, and he had to think about how do we do overtime reporting. Just want to give the execs who's working what for overtime. Simple task, right? But the way the reports are coming out of the system, super laborious to try to figure that out. I said, take your check register, throw it into AI, and see what it gives you. Beautiful report of everyone who ran it. It was amazing, right? So there's a lot of good things in there, right? So I think that's the other side of this is you got to get people thinking about like every day, like those who adopted, as you just said, Marco, you've converted, right? You're converted over to Gemini, but there's a lot of people still that just, even though you've been telling them for 10 months, try to use it. They're just not naturally making that shift yet, right? They just, so it's just happening so fast. And so that's just it. I think we got to make sure that the classroom, I was listening to NPR the other day, and they're talking about the professors are now having kids in college or high schools writing their essays in class and not outside of class, because just to make sure that they're not using AI, to make sure that they're getting writing skills. So it's an ecosystem, right? You got to make sure that the kids are coming out with the skills of knowing how to write a sentence and not just, laugh out loud or whatever the text term is, right? Not just a 2-word sentence. Like my son's a student over at Babson, and I still get 2-word sentences from him. I'm like, we can do better than that, right? So,
right.
So it's just fascinating time. It's the speed that's going to be really interesting. What we're up against, how fast everything's changing, and how do we keep the human resilience piece intact, and on top of it, I think it's what we need to make sure.
Yeah, and how do you create that workforce that's simultaneously resilient but agile at the same time?
Yeah,
right? Because sometimes they're contradictory philosophies, right?
sure.
So I have two questions that we can close up here with, and we're going to bring it back to something a little more personal. Were you running Spartan races before you started with the company?
I not Spartan, but Tough Mudder, and so
Okay.
we bought Tough Mudder back
Yeah.
at the time pandemic. Yeah, I think it's just in my DNA. I've always been that kid
Yeah.
who I was jumping over jumps on bikes, and I was an equestrian as a kid. So doing obstacles was like, I was jumping over horse obstacles as a kid. Like it was just
Yeah.
something I did for fun.
As an executive, do you find that you have insights from participating in your product that drive your decision making different than just looking at the data or looking at the financial statements?
100%. Like I get every chance I get, I'm out there volunteering, registration, like really deep aspects of the business, and phenomenally valuable. And I really try to make a point to let my team go to a couple of races a year on company time, company money, to get that experience, because not even to even be a participant, Gary, but like to be just to see the show. It is an amazing event that they put on, and there's definitely opportunities to do things better, but the consumer perspective is critical. If we don't put on a great show, we're not going to get them back. So it's easy to sit in an office and say, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, but like we always have to have a consumer mindset. So you got to know your product.
And if there's one practice from a Spartan race that you could put into the operating cadence of every finance team in America, what would that be?
Discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as I think we talked privately, like Joe, his whole mantra, and he truly lives by doing things the hard way, right? And so like what we're doing here today and with Spartan is really hard, and not just for finance, for everybody here as we're trying to build this company back up. But it's just about having, the discipline every day, keep making that step, right? Keep moving it forward, keep your eye on the prize, right? On the finish line.
Well, I really thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it was so much fun. I really am so grateful that you guys asked me to be part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have to do it again sometime.
Great, Deb.